Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to St. Mary's for the April ESS. We'd like to thank you all for joining us this evening. Hopefully you guys enjoyed dinner. There's a lot of tacos, I think, still remaining, so I'm not sure who's going to get those at the end, but if you're still hungry, just ask. At this time, I would like to invite Monsignor Joseki to give up some opening remarks.
Thanks, John. Most of you are at Mass, so you already heard of the homily, right? So you're not going to get a second, okay? So I thought instead, I talked to Trey about this, I thought instead, with a few minutes I'm up here, is to put a plug in to go see the movie Father Stu. Okay? Has anybody seen it already? Seriously? For those who have and those who haven't, okay? It's a great, I mean, besides being a great story, not for kids, of course, but it's one witness among many how the power of Jesus to transform somebody's life. So if you know his story, those who've seen it, I'm not going to give it away, but it's an example of someone who, wow, he was really in a dark place, right? He was really going down the wrong road. So when we talk about light and hope, as we did at Mass, I mean, he would be such a great example of, you know, someone whose life was completely, dramatically, transformed. So since it's at the theaters now, I don't know how long it's going to be, but it's a perfect opportunity, if you haven't seen it, to ask a friend and go see it. It just, as you view it, to see, how God powerfully works in somebody's life. There's two priests that I do know who haven't had movies written about them, but they've written books on their conversion. One is Father Don Holloway. I don't know if you've heard Father Don. Father Don, the guy's lucky to be alive. I mean, he did everything imaginable that was bad. And here's a guy who, experienced also conversion, and then afterwards a call to the priesthood. And he's dedicated his priesthood to being, talking about and writing about God's mercy, because he experienced in such a dramatic way. One of his confreres was with, about a month ago, Father Chris Alon. And Father Chris was not as bad as Stu or Father Don, but, he was on the wrong road. What stopped him in his tracks was that his grandmother, who he was close to, actually committed suicide. And so it really created, a dark time for Father Chris. And so he talks about how he got through that, but also how that led to his conversion, and then later again called to the priesthood. Now, I've just mentioned, 3 priests, so I don't want to give the impression that it's only priests or future priests that have, these dramatic, conversions, but they are real life, current testimonies, witnesses of how the power there is in Jesus, can touch hearts and transform lives. Amen? There we go. I'll be in the confessional, the visitor's confessional. You have the option, if you haven't been here before, of going face to face or behind the screen. Father Paul, you want to help with that? So Father Paul, the pastor, is going to be in his confessional as well. So you got a choice. Good guy, other guy.
Father Paul's a great guy. I won't say anything here.
This side is only screen, so they're like...
Screen only for Father Paul. So thank you, Monsignor Kostanki, making my job easier, but as a reminder, professionals, right there. So moving to our speaker this evening, tonight we're joined by Sandy Pierce. Sandy Pierce joined Huntington in 2016 after the first merit merger and leads the following corporate-wide revenue segments: Huntington Private Bank, Huntington Insurance Agency, Huntington Auto, Finance, and RV/Marine. While First Merit, Pierce was appointed to Vice Chairman of First Merit Corporation and Chairman and CEO of First Merit Michigan. A native of Detroit, Pierce is a 1980 graduate of Wayne State University, go Warriors, with a Bachelor of Business Administration/Marketing degree. She earned a Master's of Business Administration/Finance degree from Wayne State. She is a board member of Barton Marlowe Company, Penske Automotive Group, American Axle Manufacturing, and Henry Ford Health System, and served as chair of the Detroit Financial Advisory Board from 2012 through 2014. Currently, she is the business associations and civic involvements include board membership on the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, Detroit branch, Business Leaders for Michigan, Detroit Economic Club, Detroit Regional Chamber, Downtown Detroit Partnerships, New Detroit Inc., and the Parade Company. That's a lot. Please put your hands together for Sandy Pierce.
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening. You can talk in church now. Okay, so one of the things that, first of all, I want to thank Lud, because this gentleman really introduced me to your organization. And I'm so impressed to see so many young men and women come together around a common mission. It's quite inspiring to me. So I looked up your mission, and I'm just gonna, in case you've forgotten why you get together, I'm gonna read you your mission, and then I'm gonna tie it to my story. All right? So your mission is to challenge, train, and inspire young adults working in various professions to work in witness for Christ. You want to foster the Catholic identity, you want to encourage community, and you want to inspire action. I don't know your stories, but I do know that every single one of us has a story. You just heard my resume. That's not my story. Here's my story. Sandy Pierce grew up in the city of Detroit on Shane Street, where the GM Poletown plant is today. And she lived on top of her parents' bar, the youngest of 10 children, the only one able to go to college because we were poor and I had good grades. And we all went to a Catholic school. I think I was free because by the time they got to me, they gave discounts then. Every child got less expensive and less expensive. And so the 67 riots happened right in front of our bar. And I was 9 years old and I was terrified because I lived in a very diverse neighborhood. And if you think about going to a Catholic school, being poor, how did I end up with that resume? I mean, how is that even possible? And the reason is because the values that I was taught growing up in my family and in my church was that you could, if you follow the right path in life, do anything you want. And there's going to be obstacles. I grew up with several of them. And the obstacles don't define you. It's how you navigate them that defines who you are. So I went to Wayne State University, and when I graduated, I was working at National Bank of Detroit at the time, and I applied at that bank for their management training program. I had already been working there for 2 years. I was turned down. And the recruiter said, "You're turned down because you will never make it in management." Can you imagine? I was 21 years old, had good grades from a good university, had already worked at that company for 2 years. You were not hiring you in the management training program because you're too nice. You'll never make it in management. I lead 4,000 people today. Here's the golden nugget for you. Don't ever let anyone tell you you're not good enough. You didn't go to the right school, you don't have the right pedigree, you're not smart enough, you're too nice, you're too mean. Don't let others block you from what you want in your life, in your faith. So I got in a different door of the bank, and then when I looked up at the top of the bank, I realized two things. They were all white men, and they were all commercial lenders. I had a marketing degree, so I couldn't do too much about being a white male, but I said I've got to be a commercial lender if I want to progress in my career, because I was very driven so that I could help my family that helped me go to college, the only one able to go to college. So I went back and I got my master's at night. Took me a lot of years, 5 years, to get my master's degree part-time at night. And I got my master's degree, and then I got into the commercial loan training program. And do you know that I was sitting next to trainees that came from the big schools, the pedigree schools, and came from very wealthy families. So I never talked about my background. Didn't lie about it. I would have had to go to confession many times. Didn't lie about it. But I never talked about it. Never talked about from where I was from. Until I became the second female in that company to make senior vice president at the age of 37. And at that moment, I realized I was successful because of my past and how I grew up, not despite it. Second golden nugget: don't ever be ashamed or hide from where you came, from what you believe in, from what your purpose and mission is in life. And I will tell you, acknowledging my past gave me clarity for my future. And from that moment on, my parents were already deceased. From that moment on, I promised if I ever had a chance to speak publicly, I would tell my story. Because you've all got one. It's just different than mine. It's just different than mine. And so people ask me, and Lud asks me, so how do you show your faith? There's two things I don't talk about in my career. I never talk about politics, and I never talk about religion. Because those two topics are very polarizing. So how do I show my faith, and how do I bring my faith into my circle? I join companies, and I've been with companies in this industry that have a purpose that aligns with mine. So here's Huntington's. We look out for people. We make people's lives better, help businesses thrive, and strengthen the communities that we serve. That's how I show my faith. I live the purpose of my company. And that allows me to show my faith not by talking about it, but living it. But living it. So when I do a mortgage for a young person who's starting out in life, I'm actually putting them in a home that's going to protect them and their families. If I open up a college savings plan, I'm helping someone save for their child to have a future. It's not brain surgery, but it's a pretty good thing to do for a living. And that's what drives me. What I'm going to ask you to do sometime in the next few days is to take time to think about what drives you. I ask my direct reports 3 questions when I first meet them. I hope your bosses do this. None of mine did. And I've had many over 40 years in this business. So I finally had to start telling them. Here's the 3 questions I ask. I have your resume. I want to know your story. And they look at me like, what do you mean? So I tell them mine. The second thing I ask them is, what drives you? What are you so passionate about that if you didn't have it here, you wouldn't want to come in and do this job every day? And it's different for every single one of you. And it changes throughout life, but think about and write down what drives you. The third thing I ask is, I understand your story. I understand what drives you. If you fast forward a couple of years from now, what does the content look like to you? Not the title. What does the content look like to you? And in a 45-minute conversation, I can actually advocate and help someone on their career path. If you don't have that conversation, you are not being true to yourself, and you're going to be miserable, potentially, in the position that you're in. So no one ever asked me that. So now, what I do, and have for the last 10 years, is when I have a new boss, the first thing I say is, do you want to know my story? And do you want to know what drives me? What is inside of me that causes me to do this at this organization? Faith is one of them. Think about what drives you. Now, no boss is ever going to say to you, no, I don't care what drives you. No. They're never going to say that. They're going to listen to you. Because if you don't have that conversation, people in your life are going to put what drives them on your shoulders. And that couldn't be more wrong for me. So I had to start clarifying it. When I think about you and the age that you're at, I was telling a group earlier, in this country, I'm a baby boomer. There are 78 million baby boomers in the United States of America. There are also 78 million of you. 78 million of your generation and 78 million of me. We are the only country, the only developed country in this world that has you. Think about that. No other developed country has a generation following the baby boomers. So you, as we hand over the torch to you, look at the impact that you're going to have on the world, that you have an opportunity to have on the world. You live in the greatest country in the world, and you get to run it. So take that responsibility seriously. Understand that you get to create your own path, no one else. You get to create your own path. And you get to decide what impact you and your faith inside your heart and your soul is going to have in your life on this world. I think that's really powerful. And I think it's something, the fact that you're all here together networking and getting to know each other and talking about the impact that you can have in your communities and with each other, you're already leaders. Every single one of you is already a leader. So if you want to work at Huntington Bank, come see me. I want to end with just a couple of things, and then I'll open it up to anybody that has questions or comments. It's really interesting to me when people that I work with or that are in my circle complain about their stance in life. Because I think these are people that don't have any hope. And I find that really, really sad. Because people that are unhappy and people that are miserable and the glass is half empty, you don't want to be around them. I know I don't want to be around them. But how can we help them? How can we lift them up to understand that they don't have to be in a place that they put themselves in? Remember what I said, we all have obstacles. I've lost my parents at a young age because I was the youngest. I've lost several of my siblings. I grew up poor. But you get to decide, and you can help others, give them hope. I'm from the city of Detroit. The city of Detroit is 87% black. Most of the homes in Detroit, children are being raised by one parent or grandparents. They don't have hope. They just want a chance. They didn't choose to be born into that environment. They just want a chance. So if you know someone, here's how you can use your faith. Lift them up. Have a conversation with them. Give them hope. Show them that there's always a way. You all know this, when God closes a door, he opens a window. Help them find the window. That's how you can use your faith without ever saying you're Catholic. Some of my best friends are Jewish. It doesn't matter. What matters is how you behave, how you live. And I hope that resonates with you, because we are handing over the world to you, on your shoulders. You get to do with it what you choose. Make sure that when you leave this world, that when you look back, you are proud of the footsteps behind you, because they're yours. I hope that makes sense. Let me open it up to questions or comments. Yeah?
How did you overcome your biggest doubts in life?
The question was, what is your name?
Vanessa.
Hi, Vanessa. How did you overcome your biggest doubts in life? I'll tell you what, it's sort of when I was turned down from my really first professional job. I went back home, and I was devastated, crying. My mom said, you go back and you tell them you deserve that job at that bank. You pick yourself up And at that moment, I realized that she couldn't do it for me because she took care of everything until then. And so did my older siblings. Like, they just took care of stuff when I came home with a scraped knee or had an argument with my girlfriends. And she's like, you need to fix this. So I don't know if that was the moment, but I think it was. Because then I said, if I doubt myself, if I don't show that I'm worth it, then I'll never get a job. And so from then on, I'm like, you know what? I don't really care that you went to Harvard or that you went to, University of California. I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna do this. I'm smart. And I had the attitude that I could do it. I didn't know anything, actually, but I just had the attitude that I could do it. And if you know what, I'll learn it. But truly, I didn't know anything when I was going into these jobs. But people want to help people that are willing to learn. So I think my mom, who, by the way, my parents had an 8th grade education. But they just gave me that will, because I didn't want to be poor. I wanted to contribute to the neighborhood that helped me. I'm so committed to community because of where I grew up. So that's a good question. Others, questions, comments, come on.
I got one. So my favorite book is Job. Satan went ahead and said, God is one of your best flowers. I'll break it. Job got everything taken away from him, but he still kept his faith. And he got returned tenfold. Excellent story. And it's my belief to, no matter how bad things get, I still have that faith. Can't go wrong without that.
I agree with you. That's not a question, but it's a really good statement. I agree with you. Okay, others. Yeah, what's your name? Evan? Hi, Evan.
I just wanted to ask, when your parents passed away, I'm not sure when, and you didn't go into detail, which is totally fine, but I was wondering, were there any people or prayers or anything what got you through that? I mean, how do you remember them now?
Yeah, my father died rehearsal night of my sister's wedding. So you talk about obstacles? Rehearsal night of my sister's wedding. And so her wedding anniversary, can you imagine? Can you imagine getting up and having to go, choosing to go through with it? So we, as a family, got through his death, and then my mom 2 years later, by being together. But I will tell you, this is one of my weaknesses, is I was mad at my siblings because they had my parents for longer than I did. My oldest sister is 21 years older than me, and I was mad at her. I resented her because I lost my parents in my 30s, and she was in her 50s. So you never get over it. My mom was my best friend. You never get over it, but I turned it from being mad, frankly, at God too, to then understanding that they gave me life and they brought me to this place where I could make a difference. So, my why, you all have a why. What drives me is that when I leave this world, only one driver. It's not compensation, it's not title. My one driver is when I leave this world, I want my family, my church, my friends, my co-workers to say their life was better because I was in it. That's what got me through my parents. I just remembered that that was my purpose. But it took me a while. Other questions? Yeah, what's your name?
So have you ever had any like ethical dilemmas in your career? I took a course in college, and the professor said it's not if you're going to have an ethical dilemma, but it's when. So have you had any like large ethical dilemmas that you've had to face?
So Will's question is, have you ever had any ethical dilemmas in your career? You know, here's what I would say. As I was growing up in the business, in the banking business, my dilemma was, should I lie about from where I came? And I actually thought about making stuff up. That was my biggest career dilemma. And I decided, and I prayed about it, but I decided that I wasn't going to lie. I just wasn't going to talk about it. I just wasn't going to talk about it. But I decided I wouldn't lie because that is something that would define who I was. And I did not want that to define me because that wasn't who I was. So I think my advice is you will have them. We all will. We all do. My advice is think about, do you want to wear that? That ethical decision you're going to wear. You can't hide that. You might be able to hide it from each other, but you're not going to be able to hide it from God. You can't hide it. I stole one thing in my entire life when I was 11 years old from Winkleman's. You wouldn't remember Winkleman's. It's like a Macy's. And I took a belt because for some reason they wouldn't separate it from the outfit and sell it to me. So I just took it. And I went home and my dad said, you know, how did you pay for that belt? Well, I could have lied. I had to tell the truth because obviously I didn't have any money. I was 11 years old, for God's sake. That was the only thing I've ever taken in my life because that was not a good day. So at a very young age, I realized that it's just better to tell the truth or say nothing, but don't lie. And so whenever I faced any kind of ethical dilemma, nothing was as bad as that day when I was 11 years old. Others? Anything else? Is this helpful at all?
That's actually a great question.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Be respectful of your time. We'd like to thank you so much for joining us this evening. Wonderful speech. We'd like to offer you a gift of
Thank you.
St. Joseph the Worker, our patron saint.
Thank you.
And a round of applause, please, for
Thank you.
thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening. Appreciate it. And thank you.
So at this time, I'd like to invite Chris Schmalzer up here for announcements. Yep, that's you, Chris. Yep. Someone did not read the outline.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. All right. Thank you, Sandy, again for speaking with us today, and also we'd like to thank our sponsors here. Without them, we could not put on these events. These include Alliance Catholic Credit Union, Lear Corporation, Clarions Technologies, DTE Energy, Penske Corporation, and Mind Guards. And of course, thank you to all of you for coming out. It's great to put on these events, and it's good to see all of you. And be sure to mark your calendars for May 10th for one of our YCP panel discussions at Holy Family in downtown Detroit, as well as May 25th. We'll be doing another one of these executive speaker series. That speaker will be Bob Boyle, and that's in Detroit. And John.
Thank you, Chris. So one last announcement. If you guys had a chance to stop over by the Capuchin booth, from those from the Solanas Casey Center, they are having a discernment retreat the weekend of May 20th. It is from Friday, May 20th to May 21st. Brother Michael Joseph Brock and Sally McCune will offer thoughtful information, time, and space to better hear what God is inviting you to at this time in your life. In a relaxed atmosphere, you will meet other adults who are looking at possible next steps in their lives. Spiritual directors will be available for individual conversations. The retreat includes presentations and materials, 3 meals, and overnight accommodations. Very nice. And the cost is just $60. So space is limited. If you are interested, please come to me following the presentation. So, lastly, we will close with our prayer to St. Joseph. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. St. Joseph, by the work of your hands and the sweat of your brow, you supported Jesus in prayer, and had the Son of God as your fellow worker. Teach me to work as you did, with patience and perseverance, for God and for those whom God has given me to support. Teach me to see in my fellow workers the Christ who desires to be in them, that I may always be charitable and forbearing towards all. Grant me to look upon work with the eyes of faith, so that I shall recognize it in my share in God's unlimited activity, and in Christ's